Hi, I'm Anuj Jain, speaking on behalf of the Butterfly and Insect Group, Nature Society of Singapore. Today, I will share the story of Singapore's swallowtails and our efforts to conserve them through community engagement. To begin with, let's first understand the natural history of Singapore. Well, Singapore is a small tropical island in Southeast Asia, surrounded by Peninsula Malaysia in the north and Riau Islands of Indonesia in the south. It is located 1 degree north and so highly tropical, but also very small. Land area is only about 735 square kilometers. In the 1900s, the island was nearly all forested with lowland rainforest, freshwater, and mangrove swamps. With British colonization and population increasing, more than 90% of primary forest was lost by the 1900s to crops such as gambir, spices, and rubber. As Singapore gained independence in 1965, it has rapidly urbanized since. Yet, interestingly, more than 40% of Singapore currently remains forested. Barely any primary forest is left, but we still have nearly 5% of our land area as mature or old secondary forest. More than a third of Singapore is young secondary forest or parks. These habitats, though degraded, provide vital ecological services and connectivity for much of our flora and fauna, and also make the city livable. Here are some photos of natural habitats in Singapore, as I described earlier, from the rainforests, swamps, mangroves, to those that are young and created after some human impact, such as young secondary forests, freshwater reservoirs and ponds, as well as urban parks. What was the impact of this massive land transformation on butterfly fauna, you might wonder? Over the years, we've kept detailed records of butterfly gains and losses in Singapore. We find that 478 butterfly species have been recorded from the country so far. Of these, 144 are nationally extirpated or extinct. This is every 3 in 10 species. The good news is that extinctions seem to have slowed down in the past 20 years or so. And interestingly, because of a high public interest in butterflies, 65 species that were previously thought extinct have been rediscovered. Additionally, 51 species previously not known from Singapore have also been newly recorded. To clarify, these are species not new to science, but new national records. So in short, our butterfly list is highly dynamic and changing, which is typical of tropical faunas. Where can we find these butterflies? Well, the majority of them are still restricted to our tiny but very important mature forests. These are refuge for our rare species. Some of these are also found in degraded forests and forest fragments. However, the urban species are more or less uniformly and evenly distributed, including those in urban parks. We also find that the majority of recently extirpated species are restricted to mature forests. However, several of the rediscovered species and some newly discovered species have wide habitat breadths, including being found in degraded habitats and urban habitats. We hypothesize that some of the newly discovered species may have been accidentally introduced to Singapore through horticultural imports. Again, this is typical of a lot of cities in the tropics and globally. We might wonder, what about swallowtails? Well, Singapore is home to 18 swallowtails, 14 resident and 4 vagrant species, plus 4 species that are extirpated or nationally extinct. Here is a photo gallery of Singapore swallowtails, starting with the birdwings and the rows that utilize the toxic aristolochias as host plants, to the papilios, the helens, and the mormons. The lime butterfly is a common species found all across Singapore, particularly in urban habitats, whereas species like the five-bar swallowtails are common in our forests. Moving on, we have a variety of graphiums that are found across urban and forested areas. The common J, Graphium doson in particular, is considered locally critically endangered because of its limited distribution, only found in the offshore islands of Pulau Ubin, Singapore. The extinct species include the green dragontail, great blue mime, and the graphiums. Several of these species have had local host plant extinctions, such as the green dragontail, for which the native host plant Iligera trifoliata is considered extinct. The rest of this talk will focus on two swallowtail species, the common birdwing and the common rose, both of which are nationally threatened, vulnerable to extinction. Now, we've known this for a while, but only recently showed that the birdwing and rose are critically dependent on a non-native larval host plant for their survival. This is because the native host plant, Aristolochia jackii, is considered extinct. It was last recorded in swamp forest habitat in the 1930s. We hypothesized that the butterflies narrowly escaped extinction by switching to the non-native host plant, Aristolochia acuminata, or the Dutchman's pipe, that was introduced as an ornamental since the 1980s. To better understand the species distribution, we mapped out the butterfly and their larval host plant distributions over a period of 20 years, from 1999 to 2019. Through this work, using predictive random forest models, we showed that the butterflies have about 14 population sources or hotspots, distributed largely around the center of Singapore, and some in the western and southern parts. We've also identified that these hotspots would benefit from better connectivity. Now, with that scientific foundation, going back a few years now, and starting in 2010, the Nature Society embarked on an ambitious ecological and outreach project called the Butterfly Trail and Orchard. Those of you who visited or lived in Singapore would know that Orchard Road is a famous shopping district, but you might not know that it is also surrounded by interesting urban parks and wooded areas. We identified locations along this 4-kilometer stretch that can be enhanced with butterfly host and nectar plants, particularly the Dutchman's pipe. So connectivity between two hotspots in particular, the Botanic Gardens and the Fort Canning/Istana, can be enhanced. The trail, in my opinion, was a big success with extensive community participation and involvement in plantings, as well as outreach and media coverage. Importantly, the birdwing and rose was recorded to breed at the trail regularly for a number of years. We have recently also completed a study to quantify and compare the larval survival of the common rose in these habitats, these urban habitats, and compare them with forested habitats. Now, having established this public and stakeholder interest in butterflies, the Nature Society embarked on yet another project a number of years ago to raise public awareness about Singapore's butterflies. In March and April 2015, the Society launched an online public vote for Singapore residents to vote on their choice of the national butterfly from a list of 6 nominees, as you see on the screen. People voted for several reasons: beauty, size, natural colors, conservation impact, identity, and so on. Of the 7,603 votes casted, the common rose won the vote to be Singapore's national butterfly. Well, this wasn't a government vote, but it sent a strong message that people cared and wanted to protect our natural heritage. In months and years to follow, we've embarked on a number of outreach projects and activities to raise the profile of the common rose and other species. In June 2019, together with SBBT and the Wildlife Reserve Singapore, the Nature Society organized the first swallowtail and birdwing butterfly race in Singapore. 9 teams participated. We had a lot of fun, and the winners bagged several prizes. Importantly, everyone learned a bit more about Singapore swallowtails that day. Despite this raised awareness, the rose and birdwing continue to face a precarious future. One may call it a race against time. This is because the National Parks Board does not allow the planting of its non-native host plant Dutchman's pipe in forested areas to date. So the butterfly remains completely dependent on plantings in parks and gardens by keen park managers and butterfly enthusiasts. This makes the species highly dependent on human enrichment plantings and vulnerable to landscape changes. We have in fact lost several of the species' strongholds due to landscaping changes in the past. While Singapore has huge public interest in butterfly watching and a lot of locally available rich resources, there is no publicly available butterfly conservation policy to follow. At the Nature Society, we believe in engaging the public in conservation. So we've been running and managing the Butterflies of Singapore iNaturalist project for a number of years. This now is a really rich resource of Singapore's butterflies, with nearly all extant species recorded on the database. Additionally, we also maintain Aristolochia sightings in Singapore as a separate project, which allows us to keep tag on the host plant distributions of the rose and birdwing butterflies. With all of these initiatives, you might wonder what's next. Currently, in Singapore, the red list of threatened species is being revised for all plants and animal groups, including butterflies. This is hoped to be ready by end of this year. Shortly after, we would like to embark on a local conservation action plan for the rose and birdwing and other swallowtails, hopefully, in collaboration with SBBT and several local stakeholders. In the interim, work continues with schools and other interested parties to plant the Dutchman's pipe to help the rose and birdwing. Together, let's hope all of these efforts continue to help and improve the status of our Singapore swallowtails. In closing, I would like to thank the Nature Society, National Parks Board, Swallowtail and Birdwing Butterfly Trust, National University of Singapore's Sea Society, and the Wildlife Reserve Singapore for continued support and funding. Thank you.